Welcome to Galactic Nova Stories, where cosmic emotions come to life. Your journey begins now. Commander Ren Kelly stood on the bridge of the Defiance, his eyes fixed on the blue-green planet below. Once a thriving colony world, Terravis now pulsed with the sickly purple veins of the Blight, an alien entity that had consumed 11 worlds and showed no signs of slowing. "Orbital position achieved," announced Pilot Tarn. "Purge device prepped and ready." Ren nodded, his jaw tight. "Any response from Lieutenant Vix's team?" Communications Officer Mara shook her head. "Still dark, Commander. Last transmission was 8 hours ago before they entered the primary infestation zone." Ren's hand tightened around the command rail. Lieutenant Lena Vix wasn't just his second-in-command. She was the reason he still believed humanity could win this war. 5 years fighting the Blight had hollowed out everyone else. Not Vix. Never Vix. "We wait another hour," Ren decided. "Admiral." Joss's voice crackled through the comms. "Negative, Commander. The Galactic Council has made its decision. If the Blight reaches the planetary core, we lose the entire sector. You have your orders." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what those orders meant. Detonate the Purge device, sterilize the planet's surface, and leave no survivors, including Vix's team. "Sir," Mara said quietly, "I'm getting something. Fragmented transmission from the surface." The view screen flickered to life, showing Vix's face streaked with dirt and blood. "Overwhelmed. The Blight, it's not what we thought. It's learning, adapting to us specifically." Static interrupted her words. "Deliberately captured our previous teams. It's not just consuming, it's studying us. Don't send anyone else down." "I repeat, do not." The transmission cut out as something moved behind her, something that had once been human. "Track her beacon," Ren ordered, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his throat. "Got it," Tarn responded. "She's in the central hive structure, 3 kilometers below the colony center." Ren made the calculations in his head. The Purge device would liquefy the planet's crust to a depth of 10 kilometers. There would be no surviving it. "Can we extract her?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Tactical Officer Ren shook her head. The Blight's defensive measures would destroy any rescue craft before it reached the surface. Ren closed his eyes. 11 worlds had already fallen. If Terravis became 12, the Blight would gain enough biomass to spread beyond the sector. Billions would die. "Commander," Admiral Joss prompted. "Your orders." Ren opened his eyes. "Initiating. Planetary Purge. May those we leave behind forgive us." His finger hovered over the authorization panel. In that moment, he felt Vix beside him, as clearly as if she stood on the bridge. He heard her voice from their last night together. "If it ever comes down to me or the mission, don't you dare hesitate." "Purge authorized," he said, pressing his palm to the scanner. As the Defiance pulled away from the doomed world, Ren watched. The surface began to glow. The purple veins of the Blight flared brilliantly, before being consumed by cleansing fire. He had burned a world to kill the Blight. He had burned a world to kill Vix. 5 years later, Ren sat alone in his quarters aboard the survey vessel Horizon. The Blight War had ended with humanity's narrow victory, but the cost haunted him daily. Especially today, the anniversary of Terravis. His personal console chimed, with a message from Captain Lorne. "Survey of Terravis system begins at 0800. Your presence is requested on the bridge." Ren grimaced. Of all the systems to survey, fate had delivered him back here. The Galactic Council wanted to ensure the Blight was truly gone before authorizing recolonization efforts. Perfectly logical. Perfectly cruel. On the bridge, science stations hummed with activity as the Horizon entered the outer reaches of the Terravis system. "Preliminary scans show no signs of Blight infection," reported Science Officer Dina. "The Purge appears to have been completely effective." Ren nodded, not trusting his voice. The view screen showed Terravis, no longer blue-green but a scorched brown, its surface reshaped by the cataclysmic Purge. "Sir," Dina said suddenly, "I'm detecting an anomalous signal from the planet's southern hemisphere." Ren's head snapped up. "What kind of signal?" It appears to be a human emergency beacon. Very faint, intermittent." "That's impossible," Captain Lorne said. "Nothing survived the Purge." Run a full spectrum analysis, Wren ordered, heart pounding. An hour later, they had confirmation. The signal matched Galactic Fleet emergency protocols, specifically those of a stasis pod designed to protect occupants during extreme conditions. It has to be a malfunction, Captain Lorne insisted, or blight mimicry. The blight can't replicate our encrypted frequencies, Wren countered. We need to investigate. The Council explicitly forbade any landing parties. Terravis remains quarantined until declared safe. Then declare it safe, Wren pressed. Your scans showed no blight activity. Initial scans, Commander. We're years away from certification. Wren fought to keep his voice level. Captain, there's a possibility, however small, that someone survived down there. We can't ignore that. Even if someone initially survived in a stasis pod, after 5 years without maintenance, Lorne shook his head. The radiation alone from the purge would have... We need to be certain, Wren interrupted. I understand this is personal for you, Commander, but I won't risk my crew or this vessel over a ghost. That night, Wren broke into the ship's database, accessing classified records from the Terravis purge. He found what he'd suspected. The stasis pod signal matched the frequency assigned to Vix's team. 2 days later, the Horizon prepared to leave the Terravis system. Wren had made his request to the Galactic Council directly. Their response was unequivocal. No rescue mission would be authorized. The risk of blight resurgence was too great. As he watched Terravis shrink on the view screen, Wren made his decision. He had sacrificed Vix once for humanity. He would not do it again. 3 weeks later, Commander Ren Kellis disappeared from the Horizon along with a long-range shuttle and substantial supplies. His resignation sat unread in Captain Lorne's inbox. Wren had burned a world to kill the blight. Now, he would return to that world to save the woman he loved. The stolen shuttle Persistence entered Terravis's atmosphere under cover of an electrical storm. Wren guided it between lightning strikes, the vessel shuddering as winds threatened to tear it apart. Approaching landing coordinates, announced Pell, a former fleet engineer who had served under Wren during the Blight War. Beside him sat Cora, a xenobiologist whose brother had died on Terravis, and Mace, a security specialist whose motivations remained his own. They represented what remained of Wren's options. 3 people willing to risk everything on a near-impossible rescue mission. Signals getting stronger, Cora reported, studying her scanner. Definitely coming from the old Colonial Administrative Center, or what's left of it. The shuttle touched down 3 kilometers from the signal's origin. Through the viewport, Terravis appeared as a wasteland of ash and glass, the ground fused into rippling obsidian sheets by the purge device's heat. Environmental readings? Wren asked, securing his helmet. Breathable atmosphere, surprisingly, Cora answered. High radiation levels, but within tolerance for short exposure. Temperature fluctuations extreme between day and night. Life signs? Wren couldn't keep the hope from his voice. Cora hesitated. Inconclusive. There's something out there, not quite blight signatures, but not normal life either. Wren's stomach tightened. The blight survived? I don't think so. At least, not in its original form. These readings suggest adaptation. Evolution. They moved across the glassy terrain in silence, weapons ready. What had once been Terravis's capital city now stood as twisted spires of melted metal and stone, like the skeleton of some massive beast picked clean. Signals coming from below us, Pell said as they reached the administrative center's remains. Some kind of subsurface chamber that survived the purge. They located an access shaft half buried under debris. The emergency lights on their suits illuminated a spiraling passage leading deep underground. This wasn't on any colonial blueprints, Mace noted, his deep voice echoing in the shaft. The Blight built tunnels, Wren recalled, honeycomb structures beneath the surface. At the bottom, they found a chamber unlike anything they expected. The walls pulsed with faint bioluminescence, not the sickly purple of the Blight, but a cool blue that responded to their movements. This is impossible, Cora whispered, scanning the walls. This chamber should have been destroyed in the purge. It was rebuilt, Mace said grimly. Look at the structure. These aren't colonial materials. In the center of the chamber stood a standard fleet stasis pod, cracked but functional. Through its frosted viewport, they could see a human form. Vix. Ren breathed, rushing forward. Cora grabbed his arm. Wait! These readings, the pod's been modified. It's not maintaining full stasis. What does that mean? It means whatever's in there has been partially conscious for 5 years. Before Ren could respond, a voice echoed through the chamber, not from the pod, but from the walls themselves. Subject Vix demonstrates remarkable psychological resilience. Controlled isolation produces mental deterioration in 97% of test subjects. This one continues to resist. Fascinating. Ren raised his weapon. Who's speaking? We are the evolved, once called the Blight by your kind. We have learned much from Subject Vix. The blue light pulsed brighter, revealing tubes and tendrils connecting the stasis pod to the chamber walls. The subject burns with hope, despite all logical assessment indicating rescue is impossible. We must understand this irrationality before proceeding with the next phase. Ren looked at the pod with horror. She's been conscious all this time? Semi-conscious, a necessary condition for our study of human resilience. Ren had burned a world to kill the Blight. But the Blight hadn't died. It had transformed, and it had been studying humanity through the woman he loved. Step away from the pod, Ren commanded, weapon aimed at the pulsing wall. Release her now. The chamber's blue light flickered. Impossible. The study is incomplete. That's not a request, Ren said, firing a warning shot that scorched the organic material above. The chamber trembled. From recesses in the walls emerged creatures unlike any Ren had seen during the Blight War. Humanoid but wrong, limbs too long, skin translucent, eyes large and reflective. These are not aggressive forms, the voice explained as the creatures circled. We have evolved beyond simple consumption. Subject Vix taught us that. Cora's scanner whirred. They're right. These aren't Blight forms. They're hybridized. Blight material with human DNA. Mace took a defensive position. Doesn't matter what they are, we're taking Lieutenant Vix and leaving. The creatures made no move to attack, instead observing with unsettling intensity. Ren approached the stasis, pod wiping frost from the viewport to see Vix's face. Her eyes were closed, but fluttered with rapid movement beneath the lids. Neural interfaces connected her head to the pod's modified systems. What have you done to her? He demanded. We have learned from her, the voice replied. Her mind resists dissolution despite 5 years of isolation. She maintains identity through memory, through emotional connection to absent individuals. Primarily to you, Commander Kellis. Ren froze. You know me. We know you through her. You feature prominently. In her resistance mechanisms, she replays memories of you to maintain psychological integrity. Pell examined the pod's control systems. This is rigged to their network. I can't disengage it without triggering emergency protocols. What happens if we force it? Ren asked. Brain death, most likely, Cora answered, scanning Vix's neural patterns. Her consciousness is partially integrated with their system. The creatures moved closer, studying the rescue team with clinical interest. Your arrival was anticipated, the voice continued. Subject Vix calculated a 12% probability you would attempt rescue, despite rational assessment indicating you believed her dead. You've been waiting for me, Ren asked. We wish to observe human pair-bonding behavior directly. Subject Vix's psychological models were insufficient. Ren holstered his weapon and placed his palm against the pod's surface. Vix, can you hear me? It's Ren, I've come to take you home. The neural activity monitors spiked dramatically. Fascinating, the voice commented. Subject displays heightened frontal lobe activity despite sedation protocols. Cora looked up from her scanner. Ren, I think she's fighting to wake up. The connection goes both ways. She's not just receiving information from them, she's broadcasting to them. Broadcasting what? Emotions, memories, things the Blight, or whatever they're calling themselves now, can't understand. Inside the pod, Vix's eyes fluttered open, unfocused but searching. Her lips moved silently. We must complete our study, the voice insisted, as the creatures moved closer. Subject Vix represents our best opportunity to understand human psychological Resilience before the primary invasion force arrives. Invasion force? Mace demanded. The restructuring of this world was merely preparation. We needed to understand the most dangerous variable, human unpredictability. Ren realized the horrifying truth. The Blight hadn't been defeated. It had been watching, learning, adapting. Terravis wasn't a failed conquest. It was a laboratory, and Vix was the perfect test subject. Pell, Ren said quietly, can you establish a direct neural link between me and the pod? Risky, Pell warned, but possible. Do it, Ren ordered. I need to reach her before they realize what she's doing. Because Ren had seen the truth in Vix's eyes. She wasn't just surviving, she was fighting back. Neural interfacing was standard procedure for fleet officers, allowing instant data transmission in combat situations. Ren had never imagined using his neural port to connect with the very entity he'd spent years fighting. Connection established, Pell announced, attaching the final cable between Ren's neural port and the modified stasis pod. Remember, maintain emotional control. Any extreme response could damage both your minds. Ren nodded. Keep them distracted, he instructed Mace and Cora, gesturing toward the observing creatures. Then he closed his eyes and the world dissolved. He found himself in a mental landscape, a visualization of the connection between his mind and the system. It appeared as a vast luminescent network stretching infinitely in all directions. Within this network, concentrated points of light represented consciousnesses. One burned brighter than the others, familiar, achingly human. Vix. Ren moved toward her, his thoughts taking form as he approached. The network pulsed around him, curious entities observing his progress. Ren? Her mental voice was weak but unmistakable. You're not real. Another simulation. I'm real, he responded, pushing forward through the network's resistance. I came back for you. Impossible. You activated the purge. I watched the fire coming. He reached her consciousness, a sphere of golden light surrounded by blue tendrils that both supported and constrained it. I thought you were dead, he admitted. But I found your signal. I came as soon as I knew. Disbelief radiated from her. 5 years. I counted each day. I'm sorry, he said, his regret flooding the connection. I had no choice. I know. I would have done the same. Around them, the network trembled with what Ren recognized as confusion. The evolved, the transformed Blight, couldn't comprehend their exchange. They've been studying me, Vix explained, learning how humans think, how we feel, how we hope beyond reason. Why? Preparation. They're creating an invasion force designed specifically to counter human resistance. They needed to understand what makes us fight when logic says surrender. The network pulsed with increased intensity, threads of blue light trying to separate their connected minds. They don't understand us, Ren realized. That's why they kept you alive. They can't comprehend emotion. Vix's consciousness brightened. Exactly. They function on collective logic. Individual sacrifice makes no sense to them. Emotional bonds even less. How do we use that? They've been studying me for 5 years, but they've also been connected to me. It works both ways. I've learned their weaknesses. Outside the mental landscape, Cora watched the monitoring equipment with growing alarm. Their network is destabilizing. Whatever Ren's doing in there, the evolved don't like it. The creatures had begun moving erratically, their previously calm observation devolving into agitated pacing. Subject connection exceeds parameters, the voice announced, now discordant. Termination protocols engaging. Disconnect them. Mace shouted, raising his weapon as several creatures advanced. No, Cora countered. Look at the readings. The network is fighting itself. Inside the mental landscape, Ren and Vix faced the gathering storm of the evolved's collective consciousness. They're trying to shut us down, Vix warned, but we can use their connection against them. I've mapped their entire network. What do we do? Remember everything. Feel everything. They can't process emotional data efficiently. It overwhelms their systems. Ren focused on his memories, fighting. Alongside Vix during the Blight War, their stolen moments together, the agony of ordering the purge, the years of grief, the moment he detected her signal, the desperate hope that brought him back. Together, they broadcast these memories through the network. Waves of human emotion, love, grief, hope, determination, cascaded through the Evolved's collective consciousness. The network convulsed, unable to process the data flood. In the chamber, the creatures fell to their knees, clutching their elongated heads. The human connection, the voice said, now fragmented and distorted. It defies logical parameters. It cannot be predicted. It cannot be controlled. Ren had burned a world to kill the Blight. Now he would use the very thing that made humanity, vulnerable emotion, to defeat its evolved form. "Their network is collapsing," Pell shouted, watching as the chamber's blue light flickered chaotically. "The emotional overload is creating a cascade failure." The creatures writhed on the floor, their forms shifting as they lost cohesion. The walls themselves pulsed irregularly, the organic material contracting and expanding. Inside the mental landscape, Ren and Vix pressed their advantage. Every memory, every emotion they shared became a weapon against the logical structures of the evolved consciousness. They never understood what they were studying, Vix told him. They thought emotion was a weakness to exploit. "It is our weakness," Ren acknowledged, "but it's also our strength." The network around them fractured, brilliant cracks appearing in its perfect structure. Through these fissures, Ren glimpsed the true extent of the Evolved's plans. Not just for Terravis, but for all human worlds. They've been gathering data from every Blight encounter, he realized, creating a template for human conquest based on psychological profiles. "Yes," Vix confirmed, "and I've been sabotaging it from within, feeding them contradictions, making human behavior appear increasingly irrational. You've been fighting a one-woman war for 5 years. I had to give humanity a chance. I had to believe someone would come. You knew I would come, I hoped. Beyond reason, beyond logic. That's what they couldn't understand." In the chamber, Cora worked frantically to disengage the stasis pod's connections. "The entire hive structure is becoming unstable. We need to get her out now." Mace and Pell held off the creatures, which had begun attacking in confusion and pain. "The neural link is still active," Pell warned. "Severing it incorrectly could kill them both." "The Evolved are losing control," Cora observed. "Their forms are degrading without the network's coherence." One creature approached, its movements jerky and uncoordinated. Unlike the others, it seemed to be fighting against the collapse, maintaining its form through visible effort. "Your species defies analysis," it said, its voice eerily similar to the chamber's but now individualized. "We studied Subject Vix to understand your weakness. Instead, we found something we cannot quantify." "Hope," Mace answered, weapon trained on the creature. "Loyalty, love, things you can't measure or predict." "Inefficient," the creature replied, "illogical, yet effective against us." Inside the mental landscape, Ren felt the network beginning to tear apart around them. "We need to disconnect now," he told Vix. "The physical structure is failing." "I can't just disconnect," she responded. "They've integrated my consciousness into their network. If it collapses completely while I'm connected, you'll die with them." "Yes. But I can create a feedback loop first, transmit everything I've learned about human unpredictability to their entire collective." "No," Ren insisted. "We're leaving together. You've done enough. This is our chance to cripple them permanently, to give humanity a real advantage. I didn't come back to lose you again." The network shuddered violently. Outside, the chamber began to collapse, sections of ceiling falling around the rescue team. "We need to go now," Mace shouted. The creature watching them tilted its head. "You would risk extinction for one individual. This calculation does not balance." "That's exactly why we'll win," Cora told it. "We don't calculate everything, we feel it." In the mental landscape, Ren made his decision. "We're doing this together." A targeted emotional overload, then immediate disconnection. "It's too risky," Vix argued. "Trust me, like you trusted I would come back." Together, they channeled every emotion they'd experienced. 5 years of separation, loss, determination, and reunion into a concentrated burst through the network. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The mental landscape exploded with light as the evolved consciousness recoiled from the emotional onslaught. "Now!" Ren shouted, his voice breaking through to the physical world. "Disconnect us!" Cora severed the connection as the chamber began to collapse around them. Pell and Mace rushed to the stasis pod, breaking the remaining connections and opening the seal. Vix fell forward into Ren's arms, weak but conscious. "You came back," she whispered. "Always," he promised, lifting her as the ceiling continued to crumble. "Let's go home." The Evolved had studied humanity for 5 years. They still hadn't learned the most important lesson. Never underestimate what humans will do for those they love. They ran through collapsing tunnels, the entire hive structure destabilizing around them. Vix leaned heavily against Ren, her muscles atrophied from years in semi-stasis. "The neural shock is affecting the entire network," Cora explained, checking her scanner as they moved. "When you overloaded their system, you triggered a chain reaction." "It won't just be this hive," Vix said, her voice hoarse from disuse. "The Evolved maintain connections across vast distances. Every hive that studied my data will feel this. Chunks." JF ceiling crashed behind them as they navigated the increasingly unstable passages. The bioluminescent glow flickered and died, forcing them to rely on their suit lights. "There." Pell pointed to a shaft of natural light ahead, their exit route beginning to collapse. Mace took point, clearing debris as they climbed toward the surface. "How much of the Evolved's network did you access?" he asked Vix. "All of it," she answered. 5 years gave me time to map every connection. They thought they were studying me, but I was learning their entire system, their weaknesses, their plans. The Galactic Council believed the Blight was defeated," Ren said, helping her up a steep incline. "They never suspected the Evolved were preparing a coordinated invasion." "The Evolved would have succeeded," Vix admitted. "Their new forms are designed specifically to counter human defense systems. They analyzed every battle from the Blight War, identified our tactical patterns. They reached the surface, emerging into Teravis's harsh daylight. In the distance, the ground shook as more subsurface structures collapsed. "We need to get this information to the fleet," Pell said, supporting Vix as they moved toward the shuttle. "Not just the tactical data," Vix insisted. "The psychological breakthrough, the Evolved's fundamental weakness." "Which is?" asked Mace. "They function on perfect logic. They cannot comprehend actions driven by emotion rather than self-preservation." She looked at Ren. "Like coming back for someone you believe is dead." Ren met her gaze. "The Evolved couldn't understand why a logical military commander would risk everything for one person." "Exactly. And that unpredictability terrifies them. It's why they kept me alive, trying to understand the human capacity for hope beyond reason." They reached the persistence as the ground beneath them began to shift. The shuttle's engines roared to life, lifting them above the collapsing terrain. From orbit, they watched as massive sinkholes appeared across Teravis's surface, the extensive subsurface network of the Evolved collapsing in on itself. "We need to build a device," Vix said as Ren treated her injuries in the shuttle's medical bay. "Something that can replicate what we did in the mental landscape, broadcast human emotional patterns across their entire network." "A weapon that uses emotions?" Pell sounded skeptical. "Not a weapon," Vix corrected. "A translator. The Evolved can't process emotional data efficiently. It overloads their collective consciousness, forces individuation. And individual Evolved units can't maintain cohesion." Cora nodded slowly. "Disrupting their hive mind. We'd need to access their primary communication frequencies," Ren said, "and generate an emotional pattern strong enough to affect their entire collective." "I know their frequencies," Vix assured him. "And as for the emotional pattern," she took his hand. "We already proved that works." They worked through the journey back to civilized space, Vix dictating everything she had learned while connected to the Evolved network. The device took shape, a transmitter designed to broadcast specific neural patterns across the frequencies the Evolved used to maintain their collective consciousness. "Will the Galactic Council listen?" Mace wondered as they approached the nearest fleet outpost. "You're all deserters. They might arrest you before hearing what you found." "They'll listen," Ren said with certainty, "because we have the one thing they need most, a way to win this war before it restarts. Vix looked out at the stars, free for the first time in 5 years. The evolved thought emotion was humanity's weakness. They never understood it's actually our salvation. Ren had burned a world to kill the Blight. Now he and Vix would use what made them human to save all worlds. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the recording ended. The 12 representatives sat motionless, processing what they had witnessed, the complete data package from Vix's 5 years of infiltrating the evolved network, along with footage of their escape from Terravis. "This is unprecedented," Council Chair Teal finally said. "You're telling us the Blight War never truly ended?" "The Blight evolved," Vix explained, standing before them despite her still weakened condition. "They've been studying us, preparing for a coordinated attack across all human systems. And you expect us to believe that the solution is this emotional broadcast device?" asked Representative Javi, gesturing to the schematics displayed above the council table. "We've already demonstrated its effectiveness," Ren replied. "The collapse of the Terravis Hive network wasn't an isolated incident. We've detected similar disruptions in 3 other systems where the Evolved had established footholds." Admiral Joss, who had once ordered the purging of Terravis, leaned forward. "Lieutenant Vix's neural data confirms everything. The Evolved cannot maintain their collective consciousness when exposed to certain emotional patterns. They literally cannot process the information." "It's not just that they can't process it," Vix added. "Human emotional complexity forces them to individuate. An individual Evolved cannot maintain physical cohesion without the network supporting it. So your device broadcasts what exactly? Love. Hope." Representative Javi's tone carried clear skepticism. "It broadcasts human neural patterns," Cora explained, stepping forward with research data, specifically patterns associated with emotional decision-making that defies logical self-interest. The evolved to counter human tactical thinking, but they cannot comprehend actions driven by emotional bonds. The Council deliberated for hours, questioning every aspect of their findings. Finally, Chair Teal called for a decision. "The Council recognizes that Commander Kellis and Lieutenant Vix acted against direct orders," she announced. "However, given the extraordinary circumstances and the critical intelligence gathered, all charges are hereby dismissed." The chamber erupted in discussion as the Council authorized immediate production of the broadcast devices and a comprehensive scan of all systems for evolved activity. Later, aboard the newly commissioned research vessel Defiance II, Ren found Vix in the observation lounge, watching as technicians installed the first full-scale emotional broadcast array. "The Council scientists still can't believe it works," he said, joining her by the viewport. "They keep running simulations, trying to find a logical explanation." Vix smiled. "That's exactly what the Evolved would do. They'll never understand that some things can't be reduced to logic." "Like coming back for someone everyone believed was dead," Ren finished, his hand finding hers on the railing. "The Evolved studied me for 5 years," Vix said quietly. "They dissected every memory, every emotion. They were convinced human unpredictability was a flaw, that our emotional attachments made us weak. They never realized those attachments are the source of our strength." "The Council wants to award you the Galactic Star," Ren told her. "First ceremony next week." Vix shook her head. "I didn't survive 5 years of mental invasion for medals." "I know. But the galaxy needs symbols right now. Hope that we can win this." Below them, on a dozen planets across human space, scientists were constructing broadcast arrays based on Vix's designs. The first tests had proven devastatingly effective, evolved hive structures collapsing within minutes of exposure to the emotional patterns. "Do you think they'll adapt?" Vix asked. "Find a way to process emotional data? Maybe eventually, but by then we'll understand them better too." Ren gazed at the stars beyond the viewport. "You changed everything, Vix. You showed us their weakness." "We showed them," she corrected. "Your decision to come back for me, that's what they couldn't comprehend. The illogical human commander who risked everything for one person." Ren thought back to that terrible day 5 years ago, watching Terravis burn. "I made the logical choice then. I chose humanity over one person. And I would have done the same, Vix assured him. But when you came back, that's humanity too. We calculate the odds, we make the hard choices, but we never stop hoping. Never stop fighting for what matters most. Admiral Joss entered the observation lounge, nodding respectfully to them both. The first fleet-wide broadcast test begins in 5 minutes. We'll be coordinating across 17 systems simultaneously. Any sign the Evolved are aware of what we're planning? Wren asked. None. They still believe their study of Lieutenant Vix gave them the advantage. Joss handed them both command tablets. You should do the honors. After all, this victory belongs to you. As the Admiral left, Vix looked down at the tablet, a simple interface with a single command function. 5 years, she whispered. 5 years of them trying to understand what makes humans fight beyond reason. And all they had to do was look at themselves, Wren said. Their collective consciousness, their perfect logic. It made them powerful, but it also made them vulnerable. While our apparent weakness, our emotions, our individuality, made us stronger than they could imagine. Together, they activated the broadcast. Across human space, arrays powered up, transmitting the unique neural patterns that the Evolved could not process. The patterns of human hope, human connection, human love. On the main view screen, they watched as reports flooded in. Evolved hive. Structures collapsing. Evolved ships losing cohesion. The collective consciousness that had studied humanity for so long, now unraveling in the face of the very thing it had sought to understand. The greatest weapon in the universe, Vix mused, watching the reports of victory stream in, and it's been inside us all along. The Galactic Council would later call it the most decisive victory in human history, not won through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through the very essence of what made humans human. Wren had burned a world to kill the Blight. Vix had endured 5 years of mental torture to understand its evolution. Together, they had discovered the truth that would save humanity. In a galaxy of perfect logic, the irrational human heart was the most powerful force of all.